At least the voices will stop. Let's concentrate on this. If you are happy and you know it, clap your hands. Are we still talking? If you are happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Thank you very much. Now, permit me to call on our very first speaker. Malam Muhammad Sani of the United States Agency of Global Media to come forward for his first presentation. Thank you very much. Can we jam our hands together for him? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, it's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to talk about growing the audience through collaborations and storytelling niche. My name is Sani Mohammed, a marketing representative for the United States Agency for Global Media based here in Abuja. Our mission, the United States Agency for Global Media, is to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. PowerPoint, please. Please, can you put the slides on? Thank you. All right, next slide, please. I may have to use my phone. That's not working very well. Okay, the next slide, please. No, back. Back, what's going on? No, back, please. The first slide. No. Okay. Second slide, please. Okay. The United States Agency for Global Media's mission is reinforced by 6 networks that we work with, including the Voice of America, which most of you are very familiar with. It is important that I clarify that I am not an employee of the Voice of America. I work for the United States Agency for Global Media, and Voice of America is one of those agencies that are under the United States Agency for Global Media. I also coordinate trainings for our affiliates with whom we of our job. Why am I explaining this? Earlier on, I said, I want to be very clear. I don't work for the Voice of America. I work on the business side of the U.S. Agency for Global Media. And the firewall law was established to ensure, while I was working before now for the U.S. Embassy as the public affairs specialist and communications strategist, often some of my colleagues that I was working with, some of them are here now. There's Uthman, that I'm very familiar with. Sometimes we will invite them over to the embassy to cover some of our programs. I do get questions sometimes when people ask me, the Voice of America said so and so, and they believe that this is the US government position on that issue. And I'll say to them, no, that's not true. Because the US government, by this law, the State Department, cannot influence what the VOA reports or writes about. And that's true. And that's the way it works. Next slide, please. The business side that I work for, that's the business development. We have more than 420 million listeners, viewers, and internet users around the world that tune to us, listen to what we do on a weekly basis. More than 3,000 global affiliates work with us. The USAGM offers affiliates commitment, service, and success, and continues to engage new broadcast partners and strengthen long-standing relationships. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, my presentation is couched on growing the audience through collaborations. What can help you grow your audience includes to create and provide content that people can connect with, so compelling that they can willingly give their time and attention to listen or to watch. Enhance your brand's reach through a robust website offering a variety of content formats. Create interactive content and connect with the audience, making them part of your show. When I was listening earlier on to the Director General talk about the vision or the mission of VON, he talked about the fact that they want to enhance partnership and also to grow this brand as a global brand. As I was sitting down listening to him, and he said, they are determined to make this happen, focused and moving forward. It reminded me, I am someone who loves art, particularly written art and visual art. And in the past, sometimes when I'm traveling, I'm looking at these lorries with all these insignias on them. So I'm saying, God times is the best. My favorite was the one that says, slow and steady wins the race. I believed in this so much at the time that, I will repeat it. I am an athlete. As a young person, I used to play soccer. And I had a daughter who was just about 4 years old. On one occasion, we were traveling and we saw one of those lorries where they said, slow and steady wins the race. And I said, oh, that's true. I didn't know that she was also reading the same thing. But she's also an athlete. She is a runner. And she said to me, Dad, this is not right. I said, how? And she said, if you're an athlete and you run, if you run slow and steady, you cannot win the race. You have to be fast and focused to win the race. And that was a lesson. That was a lesson. So when I was listening to Alhaji Jibrin Baba Ndache say this, something else occurred to me. And I said to myself, I'm so happy that that happened during my time. As I mentioned, I used to work for the US Embassy. And one of my jobs was to identify young people amongst journalists who have leadership quality that we can send on training, hoping that one day they will become leaders in the industry. And one of the most difficult part of that job is writing a justification. Whoever you select, you write a justification. You say, this is the reason why I think that this person fits the bill. And after you write the justification, you're not going to be there when decisions are going to be made. There will be lots of people who sit down from different sections and different units and look at your justification, what you said about that person, agree with you or disagree with you. Alhaji Jibrin Baba Ndache was one of those people that I nominated at the time to go for the International Visitors Leadership Program. And I feel very proud that what I said has come to pass. Next slide, please. What was the trends in the past? This was the trends in the past. The black and white television, the analog telephone, dial telephones, and then of course, our prized possession, which was the transistor radio. I recall growing up as a teenager, we would gather around our own black and white television with a lot of friends that was living in the community. At the time, if your family has one of those sets, you were like a hero. So everybody else comes to watch. And as I mentioned earlier on, I used to be a soccer player. And so we would watch television, particularly football made in Germany. And I think some of those who are in my age bracket will remember, there was a number that we all knew about because we will write to the stars of football like Franz Beckenbauer, and they will send us their own memorabilia that they had personally signed. And that number was Transtel Cologne, PO Box 101-707. We memorized it at the time. But today, things have changed. And that was why I said, slide please. That was why I said that I was really elated listening to the Director General talk about not only what he wants to do to sustain what he has inherited as a legacy, but what he needs to do to catch up with the time. Back to the slide. The slide is just the previous slide, please. The trend. No, the previous, not the next. Yes. So today, all of this have all been packaged into one gadget. So this becomes the most powerful gadget that we have today, because you can watch your program on it, you can listen to radio on it, you can do your email, you can do everything on this. But the traditional transistor radio and TV still have to exist. So when trying to do the things that you're used to doing, you have to think outside the box on how you can catch the eyes and ears of people who are now using this as their only gadget. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is very, very important, and I want to raise it. Demographics, competing for the eyes and ears of a critical population in a growing analytical and data-driven world. Africa's youth population, already the largest in the world, is projected to reach over 830 million by 2050, says the OECD. Nigeria's population is estimated to reach 400 million by 2050, making Nigeria the third most populous country globally. 65%, and that is very important, of the population are projected to be between the ages of, within the ages of 25. And that is from the United Nations Population Fund. And Nigerian media outlets must therefore focus on delivering high quality relevant content to capture audience attention and drive sustainable growth. Innovation and storytelling are the key drivers for media success. This is from Dentsu, one of the largest global marketing and advertising agency networks in the world. Next slide, please. Although there is the belief now that social media has the largest traffic, but content could still be king in broadcasting as it is today on social media, depending on how you leverage on the content you're producing in order to connect with everyone, including particularly the Gen Zs, because the attention span is very short. The materials that they're looking at it from a different perspective, and you need to know what that is to be able to draw the attention and sustain it. Content should translate into value and gains to both the media and audience, enough to motivate the audience to like, share, tag, post, and repost. The DG mentioned earlier on that even newspapers now post videos on their websites. So it's gone beyond just newspaper. And I know a newspaper here in Abuja that also has a radio station and a TV station at the same time. So it's gone beyond just what publishing was in the past. Next slide. Partnerships and collaborations, therefore, is where to go. Content should translate into value and gains to both the media and audience, as I said earlier on. USAGM's menu of programs options are within reach at this site. We call it the USAGM Direct. Next slide, please. About storytelling. It is the very important, it is the very important pillar in content production. Often, mainstream media, the main question in their minds, that is the young people or people who are listening to you now or watching, is what is in this for me? My peers, my friends, and my family. Meaning, people no longer just watch, sometimes just to entertain or to enjoy the entertainment, but how do we leverage on what we're watching or what we're listening to improve on our lives? Next slide, please. So in closing, my short presentation, I would like to share with you this short video about Nigeria when we talk about compelling story. No, no, no. Audio, please. Audio, please.
Go faster and really gain market share. And what we're doing was also very impact related, because what we're doing is we're
In February, the Nigerian technology startup Crowdforce announced a big break. It had received $3.6 million from investors to
and we were looking to scale faster and really gain market share. And what we're doing was also very impact related, because what we're doing is we're creating jobs, right? We're creating avenues for people to make extra income in their communities. Because when we collected data on 4.5 billion traders, what we saw was a lot of them didn't have bank accounts. And then the ones that had bank accounts had a very tough time accessing the cash that was sent to them. That's where we kind of realized, look, there's a bigger problem to solve here. And we were looking to scale faster and really gain market share. And what we're doing was also very impact related, because what we're doing is we're creating jobs, right? We're creating avenues for people to make extra income in their communities.
Crowdforce was initially launched as a data collection company 7 years ago, but the company completely overhauled its business model when it realized it could fill the need for bank accounts.
Was when we collected data on 4.5 billion traders, what we saw was a lot of them didn't have bank accounts. And then the ones that had bank accounts had a very tough time accessing the cash that was sent to them. That's where we kind of realized, look, there's a bigger problem to solve here.
Around 60% of Africa's 1.2 billion people lack access to banks or financial services, say experts. It's a big problem that technology startups in Africa are trying to fix, says the African Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, or AVCA. In a recent report, the industry group said African startups attracted $5.2 billion from venture capital last year, and that West Africa, led by Nigeria, accounted for the largest share of investments. AVCA says investors are looking to cash in on Africa's huge population of young people.
Africa has the most youthful population in the world. And as the proportion of skilled labor increases, then we expect to see a surge in human capital.
AVCA says increased internet penetration in Africa and more favorable government policies are also contributing to increased investments in financial technology services or fintech. But there are obstacles to overcome, such as weak currencies and policies, say some experts.
It's still made up of virgin markets. The standard of living is quite low, and our regulations haven't been consistent in recent times.
Yet, with new talent emerging in technology, more startups with big goals are emerging in Nigeria and elsewhere in Africa. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, the point I'm trying to make here is this is one success story that you don't see this kind of stories very often in our media. But this is a story about success that young people are achieving in Nigeria. And this is the kind of story that can motivate more young people to key in, because there is job there, there is market there, there is future for them. And compelling stories like that can connect with them are things that we need to do more. I know at a retreat like this, you will be looking back at what you have done, how you did it, and then planning ahead and thinking about how do we innovate, create, and do better. Collaboration could mean getting together as you are doing now, everyone, thinking, what should we do? How do we do it? Contributing those unique ideas by each one of the individuals and putting them together and coming up with how you can be able to navigate and scale up whatever you're doing at the moment, policy-wise. It could also mean business-wise. How do you leverage on, for example, the statistics that I have just shared with you now about the population of young people in Africa and what that portends for Nigeria in particular going forward. So use this opportunity to think outside the box. Use this opportunity to think outside the box. There is the tendency sometimes for people to simply stay in one direction or one location and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For us at USAGM, we value our partnership with Voice of Nigeria and look forward to growing this relationship. Thank you.
Thank you most sincerely. Good afternoon once again. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we will now take comments on that presentation, questions and answers. We would like you to probably write out your questions so we can have a faster dissemination of such questions. Thank you very much. Next is goodwill message. Yes, we have in our midst a Major General Christopher Olukolade, former Army spokesperson. You're welcome, sir. Nice to have you in our midst. Thank you very much. Please come forward for your goodwill message.
Thank you. The Director General, Voice of Nigeria, distinguished guest speaker and participants in this important conference, I am privileged to stand before you and take advantage of this forum to make a statement on the quality of leadership that this nation has privileged us to have in this institution. And not just that, I stand to also envy you for the fact that I know, by virtue of privilege of association with the Director General, knowing the quality that he has bestowed in service of this country. At the time when it was really, really tough for us to find friends for the Nigerian Armed Forces, we found one in Alhaji Jibrin Baba Ndache. And so to have him, so it's my privilege to make a statement of goodwill, not just to him, but to the Voice of Nigeria, an institution that we've been associated with all through my career. By the way, I'm retired. And when it was tough for us as a nation, outside of Nigeria, where we were in Sierra Leone, Liberia, the only source we relied upon to know of our country was the Voice of Nigeria. And not just that, for even those who were hosting us, who we thought we were working for to serve, the only way they could know the quality of country we came from was to hear the Voice of Nigeria. So most of the time you find soldiers in the trenches where they could tune to hear, was to hear what is coming about Nigeria from Voice of Nigeria. At a time when almost the global media was focusing on the negatives about Nigeria and trying desperately to run down our operations that was meant to help Sierra Leone and Liberia to recover. But because other countries were in contest to give the impression that the humanitarian service of the Nigerian Armed Forces was really not humanitarian, but a failure. And the feat of restoring President Tijan Kaba to the presidency of Sierra Leone was an unusual feat. I don't think there was any record of it. And most countries were envious of that achievement and did everything to make it look a failure at the end of the day. We relied heavily on the Voice of Nigeria to put the record straight of the noble work the Nigerian Armed Forces was doing outside Nigeria. That was as far back as the late 80s, an example of the value of service that this station is offering to Nigeria. We are glad to still know that this body is waxing strong and even looking forward to a greater future for the establishment and for our country. Listening to the lecture from my friend from the American Embassy, we've been associating with him for quite a while, and for us to hear that he's here to speak to us. When listening to that lecture, I just recall that quite a while, not only is it a refreshing for us here, I think it's a thing we need to add to our knowledge. By and large, the important thing is that we have a good look towards the future. It's an opportunity for me to wish the Voice of Nigeria well and to assure you that you have a fan out there. Not just me, but I know that anyone who is patriotic in this country must appreciate this station. Please keep it up under the leadership of my very good friend, who have not even mentioned the personal benefit I've got from working with him as the chief spokesman of the Nigerian Armed Forces, one of the correspondents on whose counsel I relied was my very good friend and brother, Jibrin Baba Ndache. I thank you for still keeping the flag flying, and I wish Voice of Nigeria well. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Collaboration, a good look towards the future. And of course, we do have our gaze on the future. Thank you so much, Major General Christopher Olukolade, former defense spokesperson. Thank you, sir, for that goodwill message. Well, I've been directed to hold the questions and answer session for the next lecture so that we can wrap up by having a proper interaction with our guest speakers. So join me, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, to welcome one of us our own Prime University, Abuja, Professor Abba Tahir.
The Director General, esteemed other dignitaries, my colleagues from the home front, being a homeboy, perhaps, the only one among the speakers who is returning home, I was to have a few challenges if I were to speak earlier than now, because our former bosses were seated here, you know, who had mentored us through thick and thin, who are learning the ropes, along with the Amasani and Funke Atohimbe, Yinka Suleiman, and so on and so forth. You know, if people like Jijiwa were seated in an audience like this, I would wonder, what am I expected to say that is new? The Shatima knows what I'm talking about. But let me begin by recognizing some of my colleagues here, many of whom I least expected I could find them or meet them in the organization. Up till this moment, I've had a long engagement and beat assignments with all of them rushing into the studio for Von Skop, going to reporting lines, you know, and so on and so forth. That reminds me of Dio Roberts. Can you remember him? He was my father figure. He was handling me in his shoulder every now and then, wherever I go. And he said, you must handle the diplomatic beat. You know, you must handle the diplomatic beat. Come, let's go to the Japanese embassy, the Egyptian embassy, the Chinese embassy, you know. I pay tribute to him and to all other colleagues here. Yinka Suleiman, I recognize you. A defined country, who said that I abandoned my girlfriend in another man's house, if I should say so. I'm happy that you're still here. Ben Shemang, but my brother from the north, with whom we've actually joined together at the same time. Usman Tongo was one of my boys when I was loaned over to the Fulfulde Language Service. He was one of the guys I brought. I'm excited that he's still here. Parashado, Andrew Danladi of the Human Resource. Shetima Lere, Aliu Nasser Othman, I doff my hat. The Namasani, Zubairi Idris Abdurrauf, who was one of the earliest who left us for greener pastures, not only to Germany, but he had an exquisite experience as managing director of the Kaduna State Media Corporation. Hajia Khadija Sani, we had only 4 months apart with her. I came in May 91, she joined in September. But herself and her sister, twin sister, Amina, were handed over to me to begin to mentor. I was excited to have done that. I look back with nostalgia. Angela, I didn't know you're still here. Funke Ato Hingbe. I was asking her, why is Collins? Why is our Collins? You know, I took a lot of pictures. Christy is here. Kisi Jenka was surprised that I could remember this Japanese name and pronounce it very well. And nearly 20 years after. Ugoma Koki, you're doing not so bad. Sylvia Ijoma, don't mind me. I know the Ijoma, I don't know the other name. Yes, I greet all of you. Please don't mind me if I don't remember your name. But one name that I will never forget is my sister, right from the university, attended the same class. We were on NYSC, we were at Voice of Nigeria, and here we are, Hawa Sambo. Yes. Mr. DG, esteemed dignitaries, I hope I am able to secure the guts to speak sense here, despite the intimidating presence of my colleagues who will be maybe highly expectant of me, you know, that this man should not speak rubbish. But I want to do preliminaries. I want to look back. I have a paper to present, but I really don't want to be formal. I don't want to be academic. I want to take time to do some look back. Because if you don't look back, you won't look around. If you don't look around, you won't look ahead. If you don't look ahead, you are not looking at all. If you are not looking at all, you don't have a vision. Yes. In the days when we were starting, Voice of Nigeria audiences and ordinary Nigerians picture the station in the same trajectory with Radio Nigeria. This was a big challenge we had. Everywhere we rushed to with Funke and the others, looking for the next storyline. You know, if a Radio Nigeria man had passed through that bit, he'd say, your colleague was just here. You say, no, that one was Radio Nigeria. Say, what do you mean? Voice of Nigeria, Radio Nigeria. No, be the same thing. In our new rebranding and repositioning campaign, it is important for the leadership to redefine what Voice of Nigeria is in terms of both the internal and external brand. We need to draw not a thin line, but a thick line. Not because we're different or funded by different organizations or they are not Nigerian entities. No, the mandates are different. While Radio Nigeria focuses on the Nigerian audience, Voice of Nigeria is external. Nigerian diasporans and the international community foreigners who are abroad. So the packaging is different. Despite efforts to explain time and again, the mistaken identity has remained virtually the same. Misalignment of the Von brand. In the DG's new vision, we have to factor in that solution. There's less knowledge about the mandate of Voice of Nigeria by most of our early employees. We were working, we were in production, we were in studios, we were on the beats, you know, we were meeting, we were interviewing all over the place. But at some point, when you sit us down trying to finally package, you realize that we are tilting towards the Radio Nigeria format. That was unconscious. Many of us didn't know until we are reminded. Is that still happening? If it is happening, a solution needs to be found. That the Von storyline is different. You localize international stories and internationalize local stories to implant them and make them relevant to the VON audience. We have faced challenge of dialectal variations. At the point I left, there were 5 languages of broadcast. When I left, 2 more were added, Igbo and Yoruba. The challenge we had then was, especially for some of the languages, that you needed to harmonize the dialects. Because our focus is not the local Nigerian speakers, it is the international speakers. And then across the world, there is an impact of dialectal variations on the reception of whatever language you speak. When I attended ASCON alongside Lati Agboluaje, you remember her? Yeah, she was in my class in ASCON, the management, GMC. So when we attended, we were asked to write a thesis. So the focus of my thesis, because at that point I was loaned from English to Fulfulde to head the Fulfulde language service to structure it and so on. So I realized that challenge. Then the focus of my thesis was impact of dialectal variations on the reception of Fulfulde broadcasts from the Voice of Nigeria. You know why? Fulfulde is one all across Africa, North, East, West, Central, is one. But there's a lot of impact of the variations, these variations, because of the intrusion of neighboring languages. Where a Nigerian gets lost while speaking to the Cameroonian is where French gets into his Fulfulde. Where a Ghanaian gets lost when speaking to a Malian, is where Bambara or Mandinka gets into the Fulfulde. I'll give you a practical example. If you want to say what is the time of the day in any Francophone country, any Fulfulde speaker in any Francophone country, especially Cameroon, Chad, he will tell you, Montre Maui Lernoy, Montre Maui Lernoy. The most important aspects of this conversation are in French. That is, what time of the day is it? Montre and l'heure, montre, wristwatch, and l'heure, time, are French. Only oui and noi are Fula. How on earth can the Ghanaian make sense of that? It's difficult, not possible. Realizing that, we decided to create a logbook in the Fulfulde service. One of the things we did, the logbook, a big logbook. The staff were drawn from all parts of Nigeria. And even within Nigeria, there are variations. Some are from Kebbi, some are from Sokoto, some are from Bauchi, some are from Kaduna, some are from Yola, all over the place. There are slight variation, but the impact of the variation is not as big, so that whenever translation is happening, and then you come across a word that it's difficult to really translate. Initially, there's this effort that you must translate every word. It's difficult, it's not possible, because inventions and discoveries do not happen in Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo. They happen in English, in French, in Arabic, in Chinese. So it is difficult for you to find a word for the computer or for the cell phone or for radio. It has to be Sudu radio, that's radio room in Fula, or Gida radio, in Hausa, or television, you Hausanize, you Hausanize the word. So we created that logbook. You sit and then we discuss when there's a word. Everybody from all the backgrounds brings possible translation. Then we arrive at something that is closest, Then we inject, it becomes the standard. it becomes the standard. So we had this challenge. It is not only Fulfulde that has this dialectal variation issue. You know, Arabic had a challenge of being dominated, I'm sorry to say, by Yoruba-speaking translators only. The challenge of that is that the listener, if he is not a Nigerian diasporan abroad, you know, if he is from Jordan, a native Jordanian, or a native Egyptian, or a native Palestinian, or a native Syrian or Saudi, that intonation, since it's coming from the same background, it's likely to sway him away or to create some blockade. So that is why the feedback we were getting at that time, when there were challenges of even how to get the feedback, is only letter writing, fax messaging, and then landline telephone, because cell phones were not there then. And then if you write a letter from Jordan, for example, to the Arabic service, before it arrives, it takes months, you know, because of a postal system. The situation now is different. I think if it is still the same, we really need to do something fundamental to change it so that feedback is secured by email. Social media is there, very easy. Kiswahili had only one Tanzanian lady and one Nigerian, Collins Atohengbe, courtesy of Funke, seated here. And since Collins was also educated in Tanzania, like the other madam, Salawa's wife, you know, yeah, it was difficult to understand whether the feedback was scientific enough, because their backgrounds are the same. And Tanzania was not the only Kiswahili speaking country. You know, with Kenya, we have some of the East African countries, some central, some even southern, you know. So, and French was a fairly balanced language unit in composition, because there were Nigerians from all parts of the country that have been drawn to it. And many of them were also educated in France. So you see, there was no much issue with that. If that is the scenario today, so be it. We don't have issues. If that is not the scenario, management needs to be up and doing to fix it. Igbo and Yoruba, which we also have today, established later, should have little issues with diasporan listeners from Nigeria, except perhaps the few non-Nigerian listeners in Ghana or Sierra Leone, you know, but that problem is mild. I have no information about the volume or velocity of feedback for these newest language services. Yes, yeah. But Hausa and English, above all, have been the two languages with the most remarkably homogeneous audiences, comprehending every voice from whatever region of the world. Have you ever heard any Hausa man from anywhere saying he couldn't listen to BBC News or he couldn't comprehend? Yes. The Hausa Kano has been able to dominate and they've taken over. And then they've Hausanized virtually every Hausa, you know? So there are no issues. And then the English language, the baritone voice of Emma Odu, Osaze Iyamu. You remember them? There are no issues with the English service. Yes. Yeah, Juanita Iwuna, who has become Ashadebi. She was here. I hope she is still here. Oh, my sister. Congratulations. Yes. Most of the feedback we were getting came through letters list, I've said it. So today, internet technology, which drives emailing and social media like we have today, was less pronounced then. So it is difficult to scientifically rely on the feedback we used to have. So now, a few questions, like I raised in the morning. VON employees need to be aware and sensitive about the station's physical brand identity. We need to know who we are before we sit to understand our mandate and focus on meeting the mandate. Who are we? Do we have a branding brief? Do you have a branding brief? I know that we are Voice of Nigeria, VON, and then at some point in our life, the global logo was sliced into a quarter. Yes, reducing our value and valor, which we needed to have done. Internally, we opposed it, except that as staff, there's little we could do because we couldn't proceed. Today, it wouldn't have happened, even if it was proposed by any member of the Board of Management with this kind of DG in place, it wouldn't have happened. Yes, it wouldn't have happened. It's exciting that we've been able to restore the global brand. But has any one of us ever been told why we chose that? Yes, because we are global, we focus on the global. That's a part. Have we ever been told again why we chose the blue color as our brand? I was never told. But as a scholar through the years, part of the things I teach in the university is corporate branding. It falls in line. When you choose a brand color, you choose a brand item, or you choose a brand icon, whatever it is, or logo, or typeface, whatever you call it, you have to develop a branding brief. What is it? Why is it? How is it going to be deployed? On what platforms? When? Where? What does it mean to the philosophy of your organization? We have to align the logo or the brand outlook or the brand image to the philosophy, to the vision. It has to be aligned. And that has to be contained in the branding brief and filed. It is likely, as a branding specialist, that the blue color was chosen because Voice of Nigeria deals with airwaves and the skyline is blue. And the storylines go through the airwaves and reach wherever it goes. It is likely, but I've never seen anything like that written anywhere. Have anyone ever seen? So it is important for us to really come back and do that as an organization. You have to know who you are before you start traveling, before you know your direction. We need to redefine, relook at our brand design and deliberately deploy a strategic branding brief. So our VON's target audience abroad, both diasporans and foreigners, aware of the station's actual brand image and special mandate? Are they aware? Are they aware? Are they likely to really say, this is our brand color when they visit our corporate headquarters today? They are likely because the Voice of Nigeria written is in blue. The logo is in blue. But what does the orange color on the Aluko bond say? What does it mean? Are you related to GT Bank? If not, we need to do some divestment and focus on who we are based on the branding brief. How much of VON do ordinary Nigerian stakeholders and even those in the media know about the organization's mandate? Of late, how much of aggressive effort was made to first explain VON's focus to its audience, mainly abroad, before carrying out its mandate? A few words. The station cannot succeed in meeting its statutory goals or achieving its mandate without ensuring that its audience knows who it is first. Secondly, brand awareness is critical. I'm talking about the physical brand awareness. It's critical in propelling listeners to first know before making their decision to buy, or be selective in choosing when to listen. Vaughan needs to flesh out its brand internally before selling it to the outside world. There is an urgent need to launch campaigns to emphasize Nigeria's leadership in African affairs. Finally, I have 7 recommendations to make. 1, if we are to re-strategize our operations we need to fully embrace digital technologies, and we need to engage in hybrid broadcasting. BBC is both radio and TV. Voice of Nigeria can be. Going forward, our stamp will be heard and known further. Al Jazeera, Voice of America, Radio France, same thing. Nigeria has all what it takes. There's a lot of energy in this audience and in this leadership and in this ministry led by this gentleman who chaired this event this morning. We need to diversify the content of our programming and become truly international. Yes, localize international stories. Internationalize local stories. Other critical and time-honored training, offer critical and time-honored training for all categories of our employees. Explore, secure, and appropriately deploy sustainable funding options for our operations. Voice of Nigeria cannot continue to go cap in hand to the government, to the ministry. We need this, we need this, we need this. What are the, what enterprises, fallback mechanisms that Voice of Nigeria has in place that will generate resources for it to fund some of its operations? Whether it's in property, whatever it is. Voice of Nigeria needs to be independent. Let us divest from this subvention-ridden economy, kind of. Let us pull back and give the ministry, the government a leeway to say, this Vaughan, I like the emerging Vaughan model of self-sustainability. We need to secure proactive leaders who would always think outside of the box, in tune with the times, like this gentleman, younger than us, but thinking better than us. We need to collaborate and partner with other critical players in the industry, especially on the global scene. We need to always consciously project our brand or effortfully rebrand for a truly global audience. Finally, I will not go to the slide. I'm sorry. It is important for Voice of Nigeria at this stage to organize a public representation ceremony. When it is fully rebranded, physically, internally, externally, we need to organize a public representation ceremony so that the world would know the mandate of Voice of Nigeria, that we are not Radio Nigeria. We are not ASO FM. In fact, we are not Berkete. Even though our value is beyond Berkete, but we are not Berkete. We are not Voice of America. We are not BBC. We are Voice of Nigeria. We are not Radio Nigeria. Yes. Mr. Director General, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish I could speak longer than this, but I'm sorry, I do not want to belabor you too much. Thank you so much for this great opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much, Professor Abba Tahir, Registrar, Prime University, Abuja. Thank you for that profound message. You will agree with me that we've had two beautiful presentations. And it is time for us to ask questions and have answers. And for those with comments or observations, you're also free to share your thoughts with us. Permit me, excuse me, please. Thank you very much, everyone. Very distinguished guests at this event. It's nice to see your faces. Well, we have the directive of the Director General to permit comments, questions, and answers in few minutes. So we have just 1 minute per question. And then if you have yours already on paper, we can have it and just read it out. So I'll just start from my left. Anyone with any question or comments? From my left. Okay, so can I have another microphone, please? Yes, thank you. Kindly give it to the former Executive Director, News. Okay, News. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for... Hello. Thank you for confusing everybody, including me. Now, I'm a man under authority. They said I should be on stage. Now I'm on stage. Thank you. Do I move to the podium? Thank you very much, sir. I will always obey. Very brief, DG, thank you very much, my colleague in crime. Because when we were disappearing in Maiduguri, we just said, give us Kekena Pep. The man asked, where are you going to? Look, just take us everywhere. And it was at the peak of Boko Haram. Before all of that, General Olukolade in Liberia, thank you very much. We've always been together. And when the Armed Forces Radio was to be set up, you and I, your colleague, Wab Megida, we sat down and gave birth to that baby. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Happy to see you here. Every other person, may you go higher than where you are. But don't overthrow the DJ. DG, may you go higher than that. But wait for the Minister of Information. Now, when they say you wish your friend the best, I am also wishing myself. When I grow up, I want to be like you, sir. Thank you very much. Having said so, let's start with, I'm sorry, if you give me 1 minute, I always fail exam, so I have to repeat. So this one I've decided to fail, I'll repeat. Thank you very much. Now, we're talking about perception index. Let's start from there. What is your own perception of the Voice of Nigeria? So you have internal perception, external perception. What do you think about Voice of Nigeria, you as a member of staff? Do you, for example, how many of us really follow stories, either online or when it is there in the sky? How many? How many? And I tell you, if you want to look at analytics, first they look at how many, what's the traffic there? If we, all of us here are seated, we just subscribe to Voice of Nigeria online. Do you know what that means? This number. Then you share to all your friends. Do you know what that means? When they say we want to match Voice of Nigeria and other, they just look at it. No, look at the number of followership. We keep on fighting ourselves, different departments. So your own perception internally is very, very key. You see Zubero, no, he's not my boss. He's not in admin. Oh, you see Danladi, no, the file is there. He'll deal with me. You see digital media, oh, which one concerns me with digital media? These things are a finisher. Then externally, what do people think about Voice of Nigeria? The pastor will say, the way you are addressed is the way you'll be addressed. The way you dress is the way you'll be addressed. So I leave that. In other words, whatever we do here, it's what the whole of us. No wonder somebody said, oh, Radio Nigeria was there. What are you people doing here? So it's about perception, it's about external and internal. Yes, sir, quickly. Then you look at what you call the changing pattern of broadcasting, the media itself. I tell you, if light were to go out now, many of us will go back to our phones. You go to your house, TV is on, rather everybody is surfing, doing something on phone. In other words, there is listenership shift. Now, if you think, I don't know, when did you buy a radio set last? I asked you. Sorry, don't tell me. You know the answer. When did you consciously on a radio set to look for a station? If you have a car, it's already there, right from manufacturing point. But when you make a conscious effort to listen, we now know you are an ardent, you are a radio freak, you know. So we love to have such people, but how many of us, sorry, ma, don't pass. If you pass, I'll drop the mic. I'll be thinking that you said I should go. I'll soon go. Sorry. 1 second. Thank you very much. When they said SABC, for example, South African Broadcasting Corporation, at the point of coming from apartheid regime, they needed to be like Voice of Nigeria. And truly, they sent a team here to understudy Vaughan. They went therefore and separated television, radio, and all that. This radio renaissance, they gave birth to it. But what do we have? We are now talking of let's merge. In other words, we are no longer a pace setter for Voice of Nigeria, for South Africa. That's very, very disturbing. Then almost finally, you know, I told you I will repeat. I will repeat this exam. So this thing we call Global Media Forum. It's where in Europe, virtually who is who, CNN, BBC, RFI, Deutsche Welle, always hosted by Deutsche Welle. Around April, May, I tell you, they go there, Nigeria can be on focus. And there is always never anybody officially to respond to some of the issues raised. Hawa, they call you Hawa Sambonalai. Thank you very much. The Kakaki is still thinking in the past. There is change of name. Thank you very much. So I think that such media fora, Nigerians should find a voice in them, because DG, honestly, you need, Hawa will brief you on what they do there. Global Media Forum, hosted by Deutsche Welle. It's a global affair. So they can discuss countries, they discuss you in absence and take decisions. I found out that I was busy defending Nigeria, even though I was not Minister of Information, you know, that kind of a thing. In the same vein, sir, finally, before I fell, there's this other group, Africa, Asian Pacific Media something. They've been nurturing, they've been looking for the opportunity that Voice of Nigeria should be the hub of broadcasting. Anything to do with broadcasting in Africa, they'll always come via Voice of Nigeria. They gave us that opportunity. We are always toying with it. Let me say a word. I don't know who has that phrase. That phrase. Owo ni koko.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for thanking me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Well, we have only 4 questions and just in 2 minutes. I'll give the microphone to our former Director, Engineering, Timothy Young. But please, Executive Director, Engineering. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Please, just a moment, sir. Please, the questions will be taken together. I mean, the answers to those questions will be taken together by the 2 presenters. Please, sir, kindly take note of the questions. Thank you very much.
The Director General Von, and the other dignitaries present, to save time. I believe that this retreat is very, very, very timely because it has been coming in almost every retreat since the time of Yahya Abubakar, late. And even the time of our brother Kijiwa, he has also been bringing these problems. And we have been tackling issues. Should we go on ground-based transmitters? Because I'm from the engineering side, so let my input be on the engineering side. Should we go and emphasize money on the ground-based transmitters, or should we go on internet, which is easier and cheaper and with a wider circulation? And the decision has always been that we should go on internet because it costs. But there's another angle that I want this assembly to look at also. In ground-based transmit in the internet, it's very easy to knock out the whole of your country by a simple internet weapons. You know the internet weapons, they can crash your websites and you are off. They can even crush all the internet networks of the whole country and Voice of Nigeria is off. And the ground-based transmitters are not completely useless. We should maintain some capability in ground-based transmitters, maybe not as heavy as we used to, but we should maintain a minimal for internal emergency use. When maybe there's something and somebody has destroyed our websites and we cannot go on internet again, we can have a minimal, you know, we have these transmitters in the zones, in Ibadan, in Kaduna, and the East. These are internal shortwave transmitting stations that you can always fall back to and reach your people. You can also reach Australia, Europe, North America, with not that you must have 6 transmitters or 12 transmitters, just 1, 2, or 3, but you must always try to maintain the capability. Not to say because it's very costly, you can't afford it, you cancel it completely. Because sometimes you have to air your own opinion. Look at South Africa being able to challenge the whole of United Nations and America on the grounds of Israel, whether Israel is performing a genocide or not. This is the role Nigeria should be playing. So you see, that's when we come to the programming again. And that means our programming, we must have our own, cut our own niche, as you call it. And let's be known by it, like the last speaker professor said, we must be known by an identity. And he's talking about the color, our colors. Like the Voice of Nigeria station, I saw it in the program. It's not looking bluish. And I think it should be treated with urgency. Credit to our brother that has just told, we should go blue and white in that building. So let's create a niche for ourselves in the content, in the technical capability, and yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Former Executive Director, Engineering, Timothy Young. Okay, so I have not heard any lady, I've not heard from, yes, gender balance. Can we have a woman speak now? Any questions? Yes. So to former director, okay, to our former director, operations, that is programs, languages, operations, Chinyere, operations, programs, operations, Chinyere Ashade, you have the mic.
My DG, sir, all distinguished guests, my colleagues, my senior colleagues, my co-retirees, and everyone in the house. I want to appreciate each and every one of us for our patience. I believe that is also a confirmation of the fact that we actually do want to be a part of this project, re-strategizing for global impact. I was actually thinking of whether I should say something. I'm happy that it was brought up. So I have the opportunity of focusing on my area. As was emphasized along the line, content is king. And also, as was emphasized, I think it was by Mr. Shemang, he said, the way you dress is the way you are addressed. There's this thing called packaging, which I know our DG is very, very familiar with. He knows a lot about packaging. And that is one key thing that I want us to revisit in Voice of Nigeria. Right until when I left, those in the newsroom would know that I will tell you, when you start a news story with Mr. President said, he added, and and then the next person concurred. I said, excuse me, let us begin to change the way we package our content. Because that, if no matter all the platforms you have, whether the ground-based or even all the, even if you're on the internet, but if you're not packaged, if you're not sounding, for instance, we're talking about catching the Gen Zs, and you are still speaking and bringing the news in an old-fashioned way, they're not going to listen for the next second. But you come up and you say, now, this is the latest. Or I mean, there are different ways. It's a matter of creativity. You sit down after going through your reports or whatever program you want to do, you sit down and say, how can I say this thing now that is going to grab the attention? What is that teaser that I'm going to drop? Even when you're doing your headlines, what am I going to drop that's going to get everybody wanting to listen to me, wanting to stay for the rest of this program? On VonScope, what are those teasers that we drop when we're, so I want to emphasize this, that please, our editors and our producers, let us be teachable. Let us be flexible. And the supervisors should help. I don't want to believe we have any old school supervisors here. We've gone through the whole hog, and by now we should be acclimatizing, we should be listening to other stations, and we should be ready to inject this new mode of packaging and presenting our content. Otherwise, you could have the best technology, but you'll still lose your listeners. And at the same time, for the presenters, I remember when we joined, it was as if presenters were just parrots, but we said no. I remember when we started, just as we said that the television and the news stations now have the TV and all of that. I remember some of our presenters resisted it when they wanted to start the Von Facebook Live. Some presenters resisted it because they didn't want to. I mean, they said, no, this is a radio, but please, you just have to move with the times. You have to move with the times, because that's where Voice of Nigeria is going. So I want to believe that with this mindset of the fact that we need to change, that's the most important thing that is consistent. I believe Von will be re-strategized for global impact. Thank you.
Thank you once again. When you hear such golden voice, you don't want to hold the mic so that people don't check the difference, isn't it? And so we're moving to the brand new director, languages, director operations. What's wrong? Because I'm in languages. Thank you so much. We have now Zubairu Idris Abdulrauf. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. DG. All protocol observed. I think it is not about the presentations, but also for us, the essence of this retreat is for us to be able to have takeaways from all the presentations, and also we that are in this organization to be able to have, little takeaways for us to go back to our past glory and to make Voice of Nigeria the way it is. I was so impressed when General Olukolade was saying that, during the wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone, they depend solely on Voice of Nigeria. Yes, it's true. And I believe rebranding of Voice of Nigeria is very necessary if we are going to be in tune with the modern trend in broadcasting, especially international broadcasting. Yes, what gave Voice of Nigeria an age at that time, and which General Olukolade is giving reference to, is the editorial independence, just like what Sani Mohammed has just said. At that time, Voice of Nigeria is distinct in the programming. That distinction, that does not mean that whatever happened, even if some people who are antagonists of the government, Voice of Nigeria will say out, but in another way that will not hurt either the government or whatever. Now, do we have those commentaries that we normally have? Do we have those news that we said our news, even if it affects, the people? I remember there was one issue during Abacha, but Voice of Nigeria maintained its editorial independence. I remember when the first bomb blast happened at Apple, the legislative quarters, during the Constitutional Conference, in the house of Muyiwa Oladimeji. Many people were afraid even to say the story at that time. And I remember vividly, I and my colleague Ali Othman, we are there, but I have all the actualities in that place. Our late chief news producer, who later became Director News and also Director General of FRC and of blessed memory, Ben Ebuna, he said, "What about this story? What are you doing in Abuja?" And I say, "I have the story." And we take the story and we give the perspective. As the DG used to say, we have to say the story the way it is, and we're unapologetic, and we have to correct the narratives. And in telling this, that does not mean that you are telling negativity into Voice of Nigeria, of the country from the Voice of Nigeria. So the takeaways now is, we need to rejig our programs. When we rejig our programs, we should distinguish between Voice of Nigeria and Radio Nigeria and look at what the BBC, VOA, Radio France, and even the Radio Beijing are doing. It is not constant that you say a program must be 15, 20 minutes. How do you hold the audience? You need to look at the way that if you are going to tell a story or a program, even if it means 5 minutes, 5 minutes you can tell a program, and you can take care of the Gen Zs using the digital platform, and you can have video of it. And I remember, there's one time we're having a conversation with the DG when he said, look, he listened to a program about landmarks. And one of the landmarks in Maiduguri is this cap that we see. So you are telling a story about cap making in Maiduguri from Nigeria, but you don't have the video aspect of it into the digital platform. And I think we have to look into this kind of things. To rediscover Voice of Nigeria, we need to have international co-productions through town halls. Town hall programming is very important. The BBC are doing the town hall. Apada Achika in Hausa, meaning stewardship. And I think we need to have stewardship program, not only within Nigeria, but we need to go across West African region to take on topics on international co-production so that we have programs for our audiences in those places. 3,
Source sustainability through collaborations and enterprises. There are various ways that we can have this, even if the enabling law does not allow us to run commercials. There are various ways in which I think if we can expand with the new vigor and vision of the DG, we can be able to rediscover Voice of Nigeria when we have a defined editorial policy and also rejigging our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Zubairu Idris Abdurauf. And now we're going to call on our two presenters. The 4 questions can now be attended to. Once again, join me as we give a clap offering to the 2 presenters to answer some of the questions. Okay, thank you very much. Starting with you, Malam Mohammed Sansa.
Yeah, first of all, I want to acknowledge General Lukolade. I'm so glad to see you again. And I just wanted to underscore this. Earlier on, he mentioned when he said he mentioned about he found a friend and a reliable journalist in Baba Jibrin Ndachi. I recall that after return to civilian democracy, at the time, we tried to do a program in order to bring the military and the civilians together, particularly reporting defense issues. And we did a training in which General Lukolade was very, very helpful with. We brought the journalists, we brought the soldiers, and then in the same room, the soldiers sat one side, the journalists sat on the other side, and we said, this is not the objective. We wanted you to talk to each other. The soldiers will not talk to the journalists will not talk to the soldiers because they think the journalists were reporting them very negatively. And we made some suggestions, and I'm glad that those suggestions worked. We put a board and we said, tell the soldiers, write it down. What is it that journalists do that you don't like? And the journalists, what is it that the soldiers do that you don't like? We came up with 10 different solutions. One of them was for the soldiers to allow the journalists to be embedded in their operations so that the journalists can see what they're doing during civilian administrations and be able to report that it's not only during war that soldiers are very, very helpful and very, very committed to nation building. And General Lukolade was very, very helpful in that. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say I truly identified with what Professor Tahir here had mentioned, those 7 points that he had enumerated. I agree with him. You have to identify what is your brand, what do you stand for, and let everybody understand what that is. Frankly speaking, I know that a lot of us here, if we were asked what is the core mission of Voice of Nigeria, even those who work for Voice of Nigeria may not remember what it is. So I agree with him about rebranding, making sure that everybody knows what the core objective is. He also talked about the issue of making sure that the content that we churn out, we can localize, our local content can be internationalized. And that is very, very important because it is what we say about ourselves to people outside that they take to mean who we are. And oftentimes, if we are reporting out and we are reporting the same way that we are reporting for Nigeria, the tendency is that the person outside will not really understand who we are. And I think that is very, very important. And we welcome our relationship and looking forward to growing this.
Yeah, this is, let me round up by saying, or by underscoring the imperative to marry audio stories with video, even though we are radio. Radio is primarily audio, wherever you go, especially before the advent of this digital technology. But the more we marry the audio programs and storylines with video, short videos, make them shorter and post them where necessary, I think will make a great impact. I also mentioned the issue of hybrid, the imperative for hybrid broadcasting. Yes, that is it. Your radio, but video could come from your side. I want to point at the imperative also to even to go for traditional broadcasting, even though this is the digital era. Jacques Ellul says, a French philosopher says, humanity is miserable in a civilization dominated by technology. Technology is on a rampage. Every minute, every second, technology is changing, even though we're passing through that. And Vaughan is digitalizing, is re-strategizing, and then digitalizing, changing dynamics, you know. But it's important for Vaughan to really not forget the rural and that do not have electricity and they do not have internet connectivity. So we can safely keep on. That says you can't integrate digital with traditional. Finally, Ashade, please permit me to call that old name once again, please. Juanita Iwuna. You remember that name? So when she was talking, she reminded me about the imperative for organizational style. This Voice of Nigeria has its own style. I used to know we do. I don't know if we have derailed. Yes, because I could hear some news stories or some casters, you know, or reporters, the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What is the use of that? Are you addressing the campaign managers of Mr. Tinubu? Huh? That is telling us that the constituency of General Olukolade are still in charge of our country. The president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if he likes the allergy, append it. If it is not, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is popular enough. Oh, the executive governor of Zamfara State. He was elected. He's an executive. Even a local government chairman is an executive. So do you have to say, if you're addressing Nigerians, you see what I was talking about, if you're addressing Nigerians, announcing the arrival of erudite keynote speaker, Professor Umar Pate, one of Africa's most eminent scholars in the field of communication and media studies. For all of the time, for all of the people he was addressed as Mr. Long after he left office, we knew that he was a professor of economics. But Nigerians are too much. Commander-in-Chief, Executive Governor. If we're addressing foreigners, when they hear the President and Commander-in-Chief, oh, has the military taken over in Nigeria? Of course, that's the possibility. So we need to, as an appendage to our rebranding policy, have a house style. How do we write our stories, our news stories? How do we structure our programs, you know, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for him. Okay, so the management and members of staff of Voice of Nigeria do thank both speakers of the first and second paper presentation. Thank you so much. It's time for us to hear from our own vibrant Director General, Voice of Nigeria, Malam Jubril Indachi. Please come forward. Can we give him a round of applause, please?
Thank you. The day is fast spent, and it seems that we are willing to stay here even 2 or 3 more hours. Let me start by thanking Professor Abba Tahir. And I'm very glad that you are one of VON's exports to the world. And I know that my first encounter with you was in the master class. NIPR masterclass, and decided that if we're ever going to have something like this, you have to come and talk to us. And when you call, because one of the style that I adopted for this, what we agree with management is that apart from the you shouldn't box the speak Professor Abba Tahir to say, speak to us about this. He's from, so he's just come, speak his mind. Now to say, Prof, talk to us in a particular way, he wouldn't have done something. Well, thank you so much, Prof, for taking our time to be here. And I've taken note of all your suggestions, Prof. Thank you very much for your suggestion. Madam Mohammed Sani, one of my mentors, the story he shared is also connected to Major General Chris Olukolade. There's a particular program that when he usually coordinate. And I sat one day and I got a message from a number that I didn't have the number on my phone. Correspondent. So I attend with General Kolade and other senior officers. I didn't know that role as a journalist, and I'm happy that you were very keen in giving your support and also obliging to come here, and the advice I will not disappoint you working with other management. Major General Chris Olukolade in the Department of Army Public Relations was the one who broke what you call the glass ceiling. Largely, many spokespersons stop as Colonel. I don't think there was maybe a brigadier general before him, but he was the first major general in the entire forces of, I think, in Africa to be a core organic military spokesperson will rise to the rank of major general. He had that position at the most difficult period. And I will always walk to him in once we have anything, I will go to him and say, sir, this is my advice. I don't think this is what should be done. I was always, and he gave me access. Thank you very much, sir, for also listening to me throughout the period. I think that, thank you. I think that the point made by Professor Abba Tahir, and of course, Malam Mohamed Sani, speak to all the issues that I have grappled with in the last 1 year. One of the biggest challenge of Voice of Nigeria is first, the situation that we found ourselves that at the point I was appointed, I was like a general who took over command when the morale of the officers and men were low. So you have people who are very good. And I keep saying everywhere that I am not involved to reinvent the wheel. Everything that is required to reposition VON is in VON. But you have to first believe in yourself. My friend, the Director General of Arcondi, said that if you leave your house and believe you are going to be hit by a kekena, it may not be, but you see, you have to believe that it is possible to get something done. And for many of you, even the management staff, if I am listening to some people, this retreat will not happen. But I'm determined to break the genes. I wasn't brought up and mentored to take no for an answer. I do it until I see that it's truly impossible. Because you cannot build an install. Okay, how do you ask people to deliver when in the last 14 years, out of about 15 management staff, how many people have attended the retreat since many of you senior people left? Out of the management staff today, unless those who have attended as reporter to report here, how many? How are we going to, how do you run an institution where for years people don't move out of office, even to exchange banter the way we are doing today? Look at the presentation of Professor Tahir, connecting with the people, one family, the VON spirit. Because I keep telling you, all of you, and this is very important, unlike other institutions, the VON family is like the military. You are organic to VON. Many of you, since you left your university, and Professor Tarish did share that, and many other speakers, you always been involved. So you're one family. He's calling nicknames of my former director, program operation that I didn't even know. So this is the level of connection. And I think that this is the most important lesson for all of us. And that was why, even when we're discussing this retreat, despite the paucity of funds, we were very clear that we are not going to do it alone. We must bring in stakeholders and connect with the past. Let our former directors, executive, let them come and bless what we're doing. Let them come and connect with us. And you can see when many of the directors generals, they left here very happy, board members. They were happy that they see all of you. You know, I know some people in Lagos office, apart from the directors, there are some people, one of the persons in my Lagos office who told me, sir, if not because of you, I don't think I'll come to Abuja. I say, no, you should thank Vaughn. And we pray that we will be able to move forward as an institution, and we listen to all the advice, the comment by speakers and everyone, so that we can go into 2025 much more assured and better position to push this band forward. Professor Tai just introduced someone who is one of the most respected professor of media studies, who had taught mass communication to many generations of both those who lecture and those who are also practicing journalists. And let me share with you the difficulty that Professor Umar Pati took to get here. When I first put a call to him, he was in London and he agreed to be here. And every time we had challenges, I had to change it. And once I called him, he said, DJ, I will be there. But I know he's one person who is in high demand, who is in circulation. And yesterday night, he sent a message to me. He said, DG, you know, he had a meeting that was so earlier scheduled in Maiduguri, and then you move to the airport. He's leaving back to Maiduguri in the morning. So I want to plead with us to listen to him. He's just going to speak to his paper. It's just about few slides, and then we can close for the day. We can even discuss it tomorrow, you know, when you come for the first section, because leaving first flight tomorrow. So I want to welcome you and want to thank you so much for taking time, despite very difficult challenge that you have getting here. Thank you, sir.
The DG, sir, other management staff of Bonn, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Of course, I have to start by apologizing for, instead of giving a keynote address, I'm going to give a padlock address. Because, yes, so that we can close. Honestly, the lateness is not intentional. And I wouldn't want to go into the details. But the flight that was supposed to come to Abuja at 12 o'clock eventually ended up landing after 4 o'clock. My driver who was supposed to pick me was held up somewhere. I took a rickety taxi along the way. Look, so many things, but alhamdulillah, I'm here. And I will try, inshallah, to see how I'm going to make up for this lapse for Bonn. DJ, I assure you one day I will make it up in another way that you least expect. in some other way. So, and we are talking about Voice of Nigeria in the 21st century. And of course, Voice of Nigeria is part of the international communication system, particularly representing or with a mandate to broadcast from Nigeria to the rest of the world. And the definition of international communication or international communication is changing, unlike what it used to be. Today, when you talk about international communication, you are also talking about words, acts, or attitudes that impinge intentionally and unintentionally upon the minds of individuals outside our own territory, which means it is not just the duty of VON alone to manage the image of Nigeria externally. There are also other organs that are supposed to do their job. And if it's only VON, what happens to the immigration, to the custom that people first meet at the airport? What happens to the behavior of our officials outside our boundaries? What happens to our business people who go to other countries? So they all collectively combine in the formation of image of this country. And so international communication is wide, is broad, but you are part of it. And if you take a critical look at the VON mandate, since independence, the Voice of Nigeria, please excuse me over there, I'm a teacher and I want my classrooms to be quiet like the studio. So please, over there, or do we need to appoint a monitor? Okay. So since independence, Voice of Nigeria has been the official international radio broadcaster under different managements with maybe some changes in name, but the mandate remains the same. And VON is solely funded by the federal government of Nigeria, unlike perhaps some other international broadcasting systems where they have alternative or alternate sources of funding. In our own context, everything begins and ends with the federal government. And of course, that has its own implications. As we say, editorial independence is determined by economic independence. In other words, if you are not economically independent, you cannot talk about complete editorial independence in media business. Now, VON remains Nigeria's official voice, projecting its interests, traditions, values, and strengthening Nigeria's relationship with the global community. Now, for us to understand the behavior of VON internationally, we need to have a good understanding of the domestic information flow system. You cannot talk about international relations excluding the domestic front, because eventually what happens domestically is what influences the behavior outside. Now, these are times of uncertainties and boundless flow of information globally, not only in Nigeria. Because of what? Because of the advent of the internet and developments in international and communication technologies globally. Not only that, in our own context, you must also talk about the pervasive poverty in the land, rise of ethno-religious conflicts and tensions, and of course, the general decline in standards of values. But that is not only, or they are not the only areas of concern. Because of the advent of the internet, we now have new owners of communication systems that are not necessarily owned by government, that are not in any way regulated, and are run by individuals who do not have big budgets like your own. Yet, because of the boundless nature of the internet, they can reach anywhere in this world. In other words, they are competing with you in trying to inform people out of Nigeria. You have online newspapers. When you talk about digital or the new media, you're talking about three sources: digital communication or digital media, online media, and social media. And Because of the internet, they are boundless. They go across boundaries. You also try to go across boundaries. So you can see a major competitor that you have. And their budgets are not even 1/10 of what you spend. An individual can be a media owner online and disseminate information across the world. And they subvert what you do because in their own case, they do not have gatekeepers and they can separate the information anyhow, anywhere, any day. In your own case, you have to go through some gatekeeping processes and you have to be mindful of Nigeria's interests and all of that. They don't care. So ICTs have affected every aspect of life, particularly in the media and how individuals communicate. The rest of us here, we have developed new tests. Our perception and understandability of media messages, of course, differ. And whether we like it or not, these gadgets affect the way we understand information and affect the way we receive information. And of course, for you in the media, the way you source, process, and disseminate information have completely changed, courtesy of these technologies. So this is the era of the new media. And the new media, like we have said, we have listed them, and they have some element of sociality, element of novelty, and element of openness. All of these things, in some ways, challenge the old tradition that we have in the conventional media. In other words, the conventional media no longer has the monopoly of control of supply of information. That should be very, very clear to all of us. The new media are powerful, they are pervasive, and above all, they are addictive. Many of us today cannot function without our telephones. Take away your phone for a day, then you become dysfunctional. Not only that, do we even bother to understand how many times do we check our phones from the day we wake up to the day we go to sleep? How many times do you check your phone? But it's important you know, so that you can understand the number of minutes, hours you devote to your phone per day, per week, per year, or per month. And you can understand how central these gadgets are to the lives of individuals. Therefore, if you want to catch people, you have to go to these channels. Now, then, because of all these things that I've talked about, I'm sure you have heard about the media being in transition, or journalism generally being in transition globally, not just in Nigeria. And this transition is also characterized by crisis. Crisis of ownership, crisis of funding, crisis of technology, crisis of content, crisis of credibility, crisis of safety and freedom. You can go on and on listing. This is a period of adjustment. And it's not only for the media. The environment, we are talking about green environment, we are talking about subsidy removal, we are in transition. So people have to adjust. The same thing with our media industry. Globally, they are adjusting. They are going through transition, and transition can be very painful. So, inability of institutional rules and regulations to cope with changing technological system in the media system. This morning, we spoke about the Nigerian information policy on Good Morning Nigeria. And one of the things that we need to note, which also affects you, is that the dynamism in the information sector, where new gadgets, newer ways of doing things are coming up daily. These changes, we have not been able to sufficiently understand them and design policies that can address them. In other words, these technologies are ahead, our policies are behind. Ideally, policies should be ahead for the changes to follow. And this is why today, issues relating to artificial intelligence, all that, we are still grappling, trying to understand them. In other words, we have just been wasting much time trying to study on how we can use the technologies instead of how we can govern them. So, and what do we have today? We have abundance of speech from multiplicity of sources with scarcity of attention. Because of what? Because of what we call 4 V's in media business. You have huge volume of information coming to you at any point in time from multiple sources. You have a lot of information coming with top speed, velocity. The velocity, so you don't even have the time to do what? To understand the value and verify what you have. If you are not careful, you end up becoming a dustbin of information that is supplied to either through your phone or through the internet. So we must also understand our situation. Detentions and violence in the country impact on media freedom and safety of journalists in many forms. And when we talk of safety, they are in multiple of sources: psychological safety, physical safety, economic safety, this safety, that safety. And once they are affected, the motivation in the journalist for him to perform becomes injured. So all these newer, powerful, and heavily funded international broadcasters are also coming up on a daily basis. Today, a lot of countries are establishing international broadcasting systems. A challenge to the dominant ones that we know: BBC, VOA, all the big ones. Now you have Al Jazeera, you have Turkey, you have this, you have China, you have all of them. They're coming up with their own systems for strategic reasons, for economic reasons, for political reasons. So on all of this, they are trying to compete for the attention of the same audience that we are also focusing on: West Africa, Africa, then the rest of the world. And there are a number of studies you can check. The content of even our own local media here is more oriented towards the West and some crisis and conflict-prone areas than what the new international communication order used to advocate. So what is our own approach in VON? And you cannot understand all of these things without, first of all, understanding the nature of media business, even locally or internationally. First, the current digital transformation challenges the basic principles that we have in media management. That's why today you see even media management is becoming slimmer and slimmer. Not only that, media management is becoming digital. Why? You cannot have digital management with analog equipment and analog staff. You cannot also have digital equipment, digital staff with analog management. It will not work. So they have to go in tandem. Now, what are some of the characteristics that we also need to understand about media management today? One, media product is a perishable commodity, especially in the international community where you are competing with so many sources, trying to inform same set of audience. So any information that you fail to supply in real time, don't forget there is an online supplier who may not be a professional journalist like you, who doesn't care about gatekeeping, who has nobody to report to. No NBC will come to him or her. They will supply the information. And by the time you supply your own, you have become a latecomer. And information is a perishable commodity, so you will be out of business. Which means you must have the equipment that can also keep you working in real time. Number two, it is a heavily creative industry with creative employers. It's not a common side street industry. You need people with intelligence, people with creativity, people who can think, and these people are difficult to manage. You have to pay them well for them to remain with you. Otherwise, there are competitors out there who will take them away. And if they are frustrated, you will not get the best out of them, which means you must take care of their economic safety. They must be economically safe. Then specific organizational structure. In the old era, we have all sorts of bureaucratic structures in the system. Today, these bureaucratic structures are more likely to consume more money than be productive. There are smaller, smarter, and faster organizations that are delivering. So even the structures are changing now. Then, of course, the public service role of the media. In your own case, you don't even collect adverts. Your services are purely public service. But who pays for this public service? That is why the issue will continue to remain. And because you are of public service, you must be guided by some ethical responsibility and some basic rules of good taste, of maintaining this, of maintaining that. Your competitors don't care about these things, whether out of Nigeria or in of Nigeria. So then now there is a very thin line between the traditional media and the new media. Any media organization that is yet to mainstream and go online knows that it is preparing itself for the whole of failure. And that is the reality. So now you have multiple market models and innovative product development behaviors that are taking place all over. I've had the opportunity of being with the BBC, London Times, this and that, New York Times. Anytime you attend all this, you hear the kind of research and the kind of work that they are doing and the amount of investment they are putting in for them to transit into the new era. Now, what are some of these evolving realities, even in Nigeria here? The Nigerian media sector, of course, like I've said, is battling with challenges of funding, technology, content, credibility, freedom, and professional safety, and and the fragmentation of the audiences. Number one, if you do not have funding, you cannot have the reach. We have what we call 5 R's in media business. And what are they? Reach, revenue, relevance, reputation, and resilience. Your reach is a function of the technology available to you. Technology is the enabler, while content is the window. And you cannot have the technology if you don't have the revenue. So first, you need to have the revenue for you to have the technology, and the revenue is just not available. You have the big media, the big telecom technical company, technological companies, Google, Amazon, they are the people taking the adverts now. All adverts are going online. Our local media are struggling. So where will you get the money? Then technology, we do not manufacture the technologies. We have to pay, and the revenue is just not there. And you pay in dollars. The money is not available. And if the technology is weak, your reach will be weak. Your distance or your reach or whatever is a function of your ability with the technological equipment. And if you read through the media history from 14-something when the first printing machine was invented to date, technology has remained constant. Development of radio, development of TV, up to the era of the internet and then convergence. Technology has been the mover and the enabler. So you have to master the technology in terms of equipment and in terms of competence. Then the issue of content. Content is also a function of creativity, intelligence, and resources. And people do not have the time to waste on cheap content, on content that has no relevance to their life. So you have to give them something that is relevant, especially in the national community, where your own services are to be appreciated. You are not serving local Nigerians. You are serving people outside of Nigeria, where you have to work hard to create the mental image that will be required for them to understand Nigeria. You have to do extra work. Unlike if you say Oyo State, I know Oyo State, I've been there, but for someone who is in Algeria, Oyo State will not make sense to him. He knows Nigeria. So how do you create that image with words, without pictures? So, and then make the information relevant to him. So you have a huge challenge. So content production involved definitely must require resources, research, and a lot of effort for you to convince and persuade international public. Then of course, issue of, apart from content, credibility. And when you talk of credibility, you are talking about truthfulness, competence, relevance, and dynamism. And this is the era of the new media where you have the prevalence of fake news and hate speech. Fake news in form of disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, and all of that. And of course, when you talk of hate speech, you're talking of offensive speech and dangerous speech. And they are prevalent all over the place. Now, how do you ensure that what you deliver is of credible level and people can believe in what you say, contrary to all this misinformation and disinformation that is being circulated through the social media and through online media about Nigeria? So you have another great challenge here. Then of course, the safety and freedom of those who work in the system. Once a journalist does not have system, he will not work. Or even if he works, his work will not have essence. So he needs some level of freedom, starting from psychological freedom to his physical freedom. And of course, his economic freedom. If you don't give him food to eat, if you don't pay him well, he will not have the strength and the conviction to devote himself to do the work. So legal safety, gender safety, online safety, or what we call digital safety, especially for those of you who are international. You need these safeties for you to feel sufficiently covered and insured, and then you can give the best. Now, the trust has also consistently remained the key in the relationship between the media and the public. That is the only thing we have, trust. Once trust is missing, then you have no relevance, especially in this age where we have the remote control. All I need watching my TV, give me, once I see a face I don't like, just the remote control is there. I press and I change it. The same thing with you. In 1 minute, people can change. So how do you attract, capture, and retain my attention? It's a huge thing, despite all the obstructions. Now, there's also a correlation between investment in technology and product development and sustainability. The poorer your equipment, the poorer the quality of your content. And that will not give you sustainability. If you have to struggle to record a program, spend the whole day just to get 30 minutes, like I spent the whole day trying to travel to come to Abuja today, then you know that it will definitely affect your productivity. So you have to invest in equipment, and these equipments are changing on a daily basis. Then again, audience engagement is also the key. Today, you have to engage your audience through whatever means. And above all, collaboration, cooperation, and what the other C, the 3 C's in media business. So it's not about competition. You have to collaborate with international and local agencies that will also support some of your activities. Even BBC collaborates with MacArthur Foundation, as I'm talking to you, and they're getting grants. Even BBC collect grants from international agencies, not to talk of Voice of Nigeria, which means you must have a desk, an innovative desk, whose duty will be to study and encourage partnerships and collaborations, so that anytime there will be an international conference, that desk should have the responsibility of trying to look for funding for VON staff to attend, for them to be able to attract funding for VON activities. And I'm sure the law will not stop you from getting that kind of funding. You can go into all sorts of relationships that are tolerable to the Nigerian government. And it's a matter of putting an innovative desk for them to be handling this kind of assignments. And of course, this is the era of data economy. And you produce a lot of data through your activities. What are you doing with the data that you are producing? So this is a question you need to ask. Now let's try to think of the future of VON. Of course, VON is a strategic property of Nigeria that is doing a lot of intangible good for Nigeria. Just like how some other people are bringing raw cash, you are also bringing goodwill and also investing in the hearts of people out of Nigeria, putting in a lot of goodwill into the hearts of people. And this is not something that you can measure in terms of Naira and Kobo. So first, I've said the future and direction of VON is likely to be defined by one, technological trends. This is something that you just cannot afford. I'm sure this issue has been repeated here. Technological trends, and understand where your situation, what your situation is, and how you can leverage on all these technologies. And they are in multiple. Then secondly, Nigeria's foreign policy. What is our current foreign policy? And even future direction of our current policy. You need to understand that. Then of course, the audience changing tests. You need to know that expectations, aspirations of individuals are changing on a daily basis. And for some of us who did mass comm, if you could remember the uses and gratifications theory that we are taught in school. Why do people listen to radio? Why do people watch TV? Cognitive, affective, tension release, social integration, personal integrative needs. except if you understand the needs. As a producer, it becomes difficult for you to produce content that can be directly addressed to the needs of people for them to give you their attention. Otherwise, you produce and nobody listens. So we need to understand that all changing tastes, and of course, the geopolitics of information across the world. Geopolitics of information. Now we are talking about knowledge economy. We are talking about digital economy, and even wars are changing. And with AI, newer things are coming. There's a latest book that has been released on AI being able even to read your brain. It can read your brain. The technology has gone so far, and the media is one of the greatest beneficiaries of these technologies. So how are we situating ourselves, and how are we responding to these changing trends at the global, technological, and even at the national levels? Now, transition to digital broadcasting from SW to satellite-based broadcasting. That one, I think you have done it already, from SW to satellite-based broadcasting. People are moving towards that direction. Then evolution of interactive-based broadcasting through social media platforms, on-demand contents, and of course, in more and more languages. Already, you are broadcasting in different languages, but of course, you still need to know whether there's a need for you to do a lot of that, and use of data. And of course, responding to younger people's needs. Majority of individuals in West Africa are young, and they are supposed to be your larger audience. Are you able to connect with them? And most of them don't listen to the conventional radio. If you do a survey today in Nigeria, you may likely find out that the average age of a typical listener of radio in Nigeria is 35 above. Typical age of somebody who listens or watches the network news, maybe 35 above. These younger people don't care. They're not interested. And again, today, content is on demand. I can listen to a radio station at my own convenience. I don't have to wait 9 o'clock to listen to your news. I can sleep, 10:30, go to the internet, get your own and listen. So you are no longer the king. The king is the customer. So that monopoly has been broken. So, and then use of data to understand and respond to audience-required content. You have to monitor and know the data of who listens to you and who follows your programs. And based on that, you follow. And of course, so managing international broadcasting system. Managing VON is not like managing my state radio station. They are completely different. That one is a locally minded radio station. This one is supposed to be an international radio station addressing the international publics who may not have any idea of what Nigeria is or where Nigeria is even located on the map. So you need to uphold content integrity, high quality, and of course, quantity to attract and retain global audience. Global standards are not local standards. In fact, if it were for me, even employing a staff in VON, we have to do background check, serious background check before we employ you in Voice of Nigeria to ensure that you are not a separatist, you are not a centripetal or centrifugal or whatever element, you are not this, you are not that you have the interest of Nigeria at that. I'll go up to your secondary school, dig, know your university, know your thinking, know the kind of papers you are presented in your life before we employ you in VON. It's necessary. That is what they do in other countries. I won't tell you which country, but they do that in international broadcasting because you can easily bring in candidates who, instead of coming to perform, will be poisoning the psychology of the international community against Nigeria using your own instruments. So we have to be careful. And you cannot just be sending people anyhow to other countries to represent this station. You have to be very careful on who you work with in this system. Then invest in evolving technology competencies. And when we talk of competencies, sir, we are not just talking of the competence of the equipment. You must also talk of the competence of the individual managing the equipment. A radio station is like a school. All of you here are supposed to be bigger teachers than me. I only teach my students in the class. You teach the entire world about Nigeria. So what is your knowledge of Nigeria? What do you know about Nigeria? If I give you the map of Nigeria and call certain locations, can you show me? If I ask you about certain critical questions on Nigeria, can you answer? Because you are supposed to be a Nigeria's image maker through the content of your programs. Then, of course, financial sustainability, another huge challenge. And that is why, sir, you cannot just be looking up to government. If I tell you my own personal experience, I know the benefit of collaboration. In my university, in a period of 5 years, I've got for that university $6 million something for my university in Bayero University. You can ask the Vice Chancellor. The present radio and TV stations, which are the most modern in Nigeria today, the radio and TV, the university did not invest a kobo. Everything through proposal writing, international contacts. As the MD of this house, your business is not to sit in the office. Your business is to be going around the world and attracting resources for the station. So office is not your own business at all. So that is the spirit. And then you must have a desk, innovation and partnership desk. Get the best of your staff. 2, 3 of them, don't even bring many. Lock them somewhere. Their duty is to identify opportunities globally and then have the capacity to write good proposals and know how to go into relationship. Even the BBC, they do that. Talk less of our own Voice of Nigeria. By the time you start bringing in funds into this system, government will be begging you to remain permanently as the VON DG. That is the way it works. Now, invest in enhanced coverage and audience engagement across borders. And above all, be regionally focused to reflect Nigeria's economic, strategic, and security interests. We must have good relationship with our neighbors, and it is not only through the Foreign Affairs Ministry. There should be no reason why we should not have a good relationship and have correspondence in Niger, in Chad, in Benin Republic. No reason for Voice of Nigeria. Even if we don't have permanent correspondence, we must have stringers who should be reporting from these countries so that they could have some kind of psychological connection with the station. When they see themselves, when they hear their stories, that is how they will now get to connect with you. So we may not have to employ or send our own correspondents because of obvious economic reasons, but we can have one of them in that country that we trust to act like stringers, and they will be paid like what the BBC does. And through that, we can have our own audience. But if it is only our own voice to them, there's no element of counter-penetration, then we shall only be broadcasting to ourselves. So we must have that. They need to have this element of relevance in our content. Then, of course, what are some of the possible challenges for VON in the current era and in the coming years? Addressing the complex issues affecting VON requires active federal government support, no doubt about it. They are the owners. And of course, there must be serious strategic planning. Serious strategic planning. First, you need to have the long-term strategic plan, then the short-term strategic plans, which should be within the context of the national information policy that the government is now working very hard to bring out. That will give us a way to act. First, of course, you have to invest in technology, no two way about it. And that is why you need all this external support. First of all, understand that these technologies exist. Secondly, realize that your station needs them. And third, how do you now bring them in with or without government? So you people have to strategize on that. And of course, political support is necessary for you to act. And if you look at our information policy, your mandate is very clear. How can the international community communicate with Nigeria? How can Nigeria's interests remain uppermost in the minds of people out there? This is what you are supposed to do. So you need whatever political support you could gain from whatever sources internally for you to have the confidence and the competence to be able to act. Don't make that mistake. Then, of course, cultural. How do we come the issue of cultural and language barriers? So you are communicating to the international community. Language is very critical in all of this. You are not communicating in indigenous language to Nigerians. You are communicating using Nigeria's languages to the international community. And you must also bring in their own languages at some points so that you can connect with them. Then, of course, financial, I've talked about this, multiple sources, then credibility and trust. This is the era of fake news, like we have said. So extra caution must be exercised. But for that extra caution to be exercised, you need the proper gadgets and the fact-checking ability in the newsroom and in whatever source or whatever operations you people do. There must be fact-checking desks to ensure that mistakes are not easily committed. And of course, operational issues. We must protect the safety of the staff and create conducive working environment for them. International radio station is a station that is supposed to be working 24 hours. And because they are working for 24 hours and the staff are supposed to be operating at the international level, then their convenience is important. Anybody who is overstretched will not think well. Anybody who does not read will not produce ideas. Do you have a functional library? Do you have a laptop that you can also get information every time, every day at the fingertips? Do you have this? Do you have that? Because these are the things that if I make them available to you, I can have the courage to query you when you fail to perform. And do we also do a lot of research about Nigeria to inform the rest of the world? Or do we simply continue telling them what they know about ourselves? And sometimes continue repeating the stereotypes about us and about other African countries. So knowledge is very, very important. If I were to be the DG of VON today, I'll be giving examinations every 6 months. If you fail, I cannot promote illiteracy in the international level. And you cannot give what you don't have. And a radio station is like a classroom. As a producer, you teach the whole world. As a teacher, I teach a classroom. So you see, you are more important than me, except if you fail to realize that importance. So audience attraction and retention. Audience management, engagement should be top on what we do. No two way about it. If the audience is not there, you will not be there. We are there because of the audience. So how do we convince the audience to be with us? Finally, we need to consider rebranding VON to include video and audio services. Ideally, you are supposed to be NTA International. You should have VON International. Oh, I don't know. This one is because they are local. That's what they're saying international. Okay, you are already international. You know, your duty is to internationalize the local and localize the internationals. This is what you people have been doing. In other words, you simplify what is complex and complicate what is simple for other people to be more confused. But on a very serious note, the issue of video, you know that the future of communication is in audio and video. So if you don't have it, you have to see how you can convince government for you to also have the video wing. Definitely you deserve to have it. You are not going to compete with NTA. NTA has its own mandate, you have your own mandate, but it's now left for you to work towards that. Then number 2, strengthen collaboration and linkages with domestic and international institutions, just like what I've said. I'm a good example of the benefit of collaboration. So if you collaborate, something will come. But it's now left for you to know who your partners will be. And then, of course, VON broadcasters should explain to simplify what is complex about Nigeria. What is it that people out there don't know about Nigeria? What do you think that people should know about Nigeria? You don't have to repeat the BBC model. You can create your own model. Chinese have created their own model. The Turkish are creating their own. Iran, they have their own. So what is our own brand? What is our own model of broadcasting in the international arena? We need to have our own. then broadcasters are also encouraged to collaborate and cooperate with other professionals. You need information on a daily basis. You need professional information, so you need to relate with other professionals. That is why you need to be in several networks and have as many friends across disciplines as possible, because you are always in need of what? Information to be able to disseminate. And what do you mean by information, by the way? Information simply means uncertainty reduction. If you reduce the level of uncertainty that exists on the mind of an individual, you are informing him. Right now, if I ask you, tell me the contents of my pocket, you are not informed. But if I bring it out, you are informed now that there's a phone in my pocket. And that is what you should be doing. How do you reduce the uncertainty that exists on the minds of people? That is why we don't have opposite to the word information. You either misinform, disinform, malinform, but you are informing. Only that you are informing maybe in a negative way, in a way that I don't like, but you are informing. That is why in communication, we teach our students, you cannot not communicate. No matter what you do, you must communicate. So even if Von keeps quiet, you are communicating. You are telling them that Nigeria cannot afford to broadcast. That is the signal you are sending. So if you are on air, they will know you are communicating. If you are not on air, they know you are communicating. Now it's left for them to make impressions. So last one, we should uphold investigative and data-driven journalism. It's a must. Even if we are Nigerians, we don't want to expose our negativities. There are multiple areas of investigation that we can do, which will be in the interest of Nigeria. For example, take environmental corruption. How our environment are being devastated by foreigners, the illegal mining, this and that. These are serious areas that one can do investigations. Not just about the stealing behavior, but there are a lot of other areas that we can also investigate. And this is what people want to hear. People are tired of hearing, he said, he described, he lamented, he explained, he emphasized. We are tired of hearing these expressions. And you cannot set the agenda with that. What you are doing with that is you are just a recorder of history, not an agenda setter. So we are just recording history. Shikena. But if you want to set the agenda, you must engage in investigative and data journalism. And people want facts. That is what people want. Finally, my last line is, Von should focus on the 5 R's. Reach, revenue, relevance, reputation, and resilience in their operations and services. These are the things that can give you the credibility, that can make you a world-class broadcasting institution. And you also need to know that this is the era of knowledge-driven economy, and knowledge this, knowledge that. This is the era of technology. It's either you ship in or you ship out. The DG, sir, let me at this point once again apologize and thank you most profusely, and you are managing for tolerating me. Honestly, I did not come late intentionally, but I thank you for giving me the platform and for also listening and sharing with me some of my thoughts about Von. I will always be available in the service of Von. And I pray that I'll be of assistance to you. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Umaru Pate. We are honored. Thank you for that presentation. I kept hearing all through today matters of collaboration, partnerships. The DG himself talked about 3 Ps. We talked about people, platform, partnerships. When we had Professor Abba Tahir, he mentioned identity. Who are you? And then he went on to still talk about partnerships. And then we had Malam Muhammad Sani. He also told us about editorial independence or dependency, independence, editorial independence. And he did, yes, fireworks. Thank you very much. Yes, you're listening, Izzy. And he did conclude with the ability of Voice of Nigeria to partner. So we also from erudite Professor Umaru Pate learned 5 R's. I don't know how many of you can recall what that was. He talked about resilience. Oh, you are listening. A round of applause for yourselves. Thank you very much for that. So we've got work to do. We've got work to do. More importantly, your safety is very important. And so, with the kind permission of the Director General, Voice of Nigeria, Malam Jubrin Baba Ndache, we come to the end of day 1 of VON Management Retreat 2024 with the theme Voice of Nigeria in the 21st Century, Restrategizing for Global Impact. And believe you me, it's been an exciting time with our fantastic keynote speaker and guest speakers. We are also happy to see all our former directors, executive directors, colleagues from Lagos, colleagues from all other zonal offices. You are all welcome. We thank you. Welcome to Abuja, and we thank you for coming. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sure we've got some takeaways from today's program. And so please be right here on time tomorrow. We will kick off at 9 a.m. dots. And with that, my name is Abiodun Ozurumba. They call me Handshake Across the Niger. I'm sure the DG doesn't know that. I work with Voice of Nigeria programs languages. And so let's rise as we lift our minds and our hearts and our organization to the Almighty Creator for having a successful, beautiful day today. Can we be up standing? Can you please pray in your minds and in your religion for 1 minute? May God be with us always. Amen. Thank you very much for coming. I would like to see all your faces. We've been told about identities and identity, Voice of Nigerian brand. Please wear a touch of blue tomorrow. I'm sure you have one in your closet. Thank you so much and have a nice day.